and I have the pleasure of introducing Amanda Martinez today. She is currently Training Program Manager for Mental Health America of Hawaii. Since 2017, she has trained thousands of youth and adults in Hawaii with Mental Health America Hawaii's youth suicide and bullying prevention and mental wellness training. She is also a certified trainer for mental health first aid and youth mental health first aid training. Amanda received her master's in public health degree from the University of Hawaii at Manoa, specializing in social and behavioral health sciences. She is interested in mental health wellness promotion among youth and young adults, especially among sexual and gender minorities. So with that, I will hand it over to Amanda for a really awesome presentation.
Thank you, Lisa, and hello, everyone. Good morning. Like you just heard, my name is Amanda. I am the Training Program Manager with Mental Health America of Hawaii, and give me just one moment. I'll share my screen with all of you. It should be popping up, but if for some reason you can't see it, just go ahead and let me know in the chat, and I could do some troubleshooting on my end. Right, so I recognize a couple faces here. So hello, but we've had the pleasure of collaborating together before. If you've attended any of our other trainings, I'm really honored to be able to come and do a quick presentation. It's kind of a modified version of a longer one of managing complex emotions in a complex world. So what I really want to focus on is how we can determine where we're at in levels of our stress and anxiety levels, and then what can we do to help ourselves manage those levels as well. So I'll be going through the slides a little more quickly than I normally would, but I will send them over to all of you as well, so you have them. And this is also being recorded, so you could definitely go back and watch it. I'll be sure to drop our YouTube link in the chat as well if you ever want to go and check out the entire presentation or any of the other ones that we offer as well. We make those available. Okay, so what I did want to kind of focus on for today is really to just highlight the physiological and psychological effects that stress and anxiety can have on both our mental and our physical health, because once we can identify those, it really does help us to kind of gauge where we are at and how to recognize when we may need to practice some self-care or identify different kind of coping skills to help us manage those increasing levels. So we'll be identifying a couple really specific ones. I just want to highlight them, but there's so many that are out there. I really encourage you to take the time to explore what actually is out there, but also to explore the ones that are going to work for you when you're in different places. And we at Mental Health America of Hawaii also really love sharing resources. So we'll be going through all the wonderful kinds of resources that are available both locally here in Hawaii, but also on a national level too. Okay, so in summary, we have seen a fairly negative impact on people's mental health over the past couple of years. I think we can all attest to that there has definitely been some increased levels of both stress and anxiety, and we have seen that being reflected in the research and the data that has become available as well. I do want to note that research is still continuously being conducted and being made available, so this is kind of just like a snapshot of the landscape that we have been seeing thus far. But what we have seen is just an overall across the board increases in levels of feelings of depression, of anxiety, of substance use, of psychosis, of suicidality as well. For those who were already experiencing mental health challenges prior to everything happening over the past couple of years, we have also seen an increase in the severity of those symptoms, right? So people who were already struggling with their mental health were struggling even more so. And it is a changing landscape. Like I said, nationwide, we have seen this kind of increase really across the board, across multiple age groups, geographic locations, socioeconomic statuses as well. So it is really important that we are taking the time to raise awareness about it, to have conversations about mental health so that we are able to manage our own stress and anxiety levels. And that way it'll set us up into a better position to be able to help support other people. So here's a list of just some of the different kinds of signs and symptoms that are often associated with feelings of stress and anxiety. We could see on the left-hand side is the more psychological aspect. So everything that kind of going on the inside, right? Our thoughts, our emotions, things that are happening with our mind. So it could be excessive worry, like racing thoughts, can't stop thinking about the things that really stress someone out or worry them. It's hard to think about anything else, hard to concentrate, to focus, to pay attention. There may be some kind of outward expressions of irritability and anger as well. Sometimes when we talk about mental health, we're only focusing on the one side of the spectrum where it is like feeling more sad, right, or feeling down. But it's also a whole other side to the spectrum too, where it is sometimes feeling frustrated and irritable and angry and overwhelmed at times. So we want to make sure we're looking at that entire spectrum, because we experience a whole wide range of different kind of moods, different emotions. They range, they change constantly, they fluctuate, sometimes they circle right back around to each other. So it's important that we are aware, right, and checking in with our own selves if we're recognizing any of these kinds of signs and symptoms. We've also seen an increase in folks who are having sleep disturbances, right? I think on average it's been about 30 minutes for folks who have had their sleep impacted, right? So making it harder to actually fall asleep and then to stay asleep throughout the night, kind of tossing and turning, feeling really restless. And sleep is actually a really important part for our overall health. We do want to make sure that we are doing our best to get enough sleep every night, but sometimes that is an area where that could definitely be impacted, especially when we are feeling especially stressed out or experiencing feelings of anxiety. We also see impacts on our physical health too. So we may see some physiological symptoms arise too. So those kind of physical manifestations, things that are happening with our body, like we can actually feel it. So we don't always talk about this side of the list, right, with these kinds of signs and symptoms that can be associated with stress and anxiety. So this may look like increased heartbeat, shortness of breath, experiencing chest pains or muscle tension, right? And that could be presented as having headaches or tension in your jaw because we've been clenching our jaw for the past 15 minutes and we haven't even realized that it's been happening. So we can start to feel that tightness, right? Shoulder and back pain. So sometimes we may not always be aware of the kind of muscle tension that we may be carrying, and especially if we're experiencing prolonged feelings of stress, that could really build up over time without our body necessarily even noticing that. It is important to look at the physiological symptoms as well. Sometimes it is hard to distinguish between what could be a medical problem versus what could be a mental health problem, but there is definitely a connection. So that's just really why it's important that we're doing things to take care of both, that we want to be aware of both sides. When we take care of one, it also means that we are taking care of the other. But if we were to just look at the right-hand slide, or right-hand side of the slide, I should say, our first thought may go to like an allergic reaction or someone who is experiencing like a heart attack, let's say. And we may not always think right away that it could be mental health related, but it's always a possibility. So it is just good practice if you are unsure if it's a medical problem or if it may be mental health related, to address the medical first, to make sure you're covered on that side, and then you can explore the mental health side of it to find yourself a little bit more support. It's important as well to know that humans are fairly resilient, and there are things that we can actually do to increase that sense of resiliency, and it's really actually taking the time to take care of our mental health, right? So making the time for practicing self-care, identifying different coping skills that are going to work for us in different situations, doing our best to plan ahead. I mean, we can't predict the future or anything. We can do our best to plan ahead. And hopefully that'll help ease a little bit of anxiety if we have some structure in our life. But we also have to learn when to kind of let go of the things that we don't necessarily have any control over. And of course, be flexible when things change, because if we've learned anything over the past couple of years, is that things change constantly. And so we have to kind of adjust and adapt and be flexible in that way. Make sure you go back to those basics too, that you're getting a good amount of sleep, you're staying hydrated, eating a healthy, balanced diet as best as you are able to, getting a regular amount of physical activity in your life, and give yourself time to take a break, right? To allow your body and your brain a chance to rest and to relax and to recharge. And that's going to help you focus more when the time comes, right? And I know sometimes we're just stuck on Zoom meetings all day, but it does help to actually schedule in those rest breaks so we can just give our bodies and our brain a chance to recharge, right? We have to be able to do that. So it sets us up better to just be able to get through our day and continue on through our week. It's really important that we're also connecting with our social support system. So we'll talk a little bit more about support plans. I think I have a slide on it later on in the presentation, but it is really important that we are doing our best to stay connected. I mean, luckily enough, we do live in a world where technology allows us to be able to do this. We've had to get real creative in staying connected with our social support systems, but I have seen people get really creative with the step here, like having Zoom dance parties, youth having virtual study sessions, like streaming movies and television shows together at the same time, you know, taking things outside, hanging out at the park or having a beach day. So there are still ways that we can stay connected. And it's just really important that we make that effort too, especially since we've had to practice that physical distancing. What we've also seen come up is increased feelings of isolation, right? And sense of loneliness. So we have to make sure we're leaning on our social support systems a bit, and that's going to help boost our sense of resiliency as well. And really just remember that we're all doing the best that we can, right? If we're making our best effort, putting our best foot forward, that is good enough. As much as we talk about extending kindness and respect outwards towards other people, sometimes we have to turn that inwards towards ourselves too. And it's not always the easiest thing. But we do have to take it easy on ourselves every once in a while and remember that doing your best is absolutely good enough. We also want to know kind of what the warning signs are. So beyond those kind of introductory signs and symptoms of when someone may be experiencing higher levels of stress and anxiety, this is where things are really starting to progress and it's actually really starting to have an impact on someone's life. We call these warning signs, definite causes of concern. So if someone's mood is dysregulated for an extended period of time, I'm not a mental health professional, I'm a public health person, and I'm not trying to turn any of you into mental health professionals either, unless you already are one, then thank you, we love you, and we need you in this world, especially during these times. But the point of kind of having these check marks or these benchmarks is to give us an idea of when is a good time to either check in with myself or to check into someone that I may be noticing any of these things are popping up in their life, right? So if they're not quite acting like they normally do, if there's that general kind of loss of interest, so the things that they used to really enjoy doing that brought them happiness, satisfaction, made them feel productive, they're just really kind of pulling away from those activities. Any expression of suicidality, right? Anyone who is having thoughts of suicide should absolutely be a warning sign for us, something we should take seriously every time, and connecting them to the help and support and to the resources that they need to be able to help them. Really, we can summarize these warning signs and ask ourselves is how much of an impact is this having on someone's life, right? If all of those signs and symptoms or some of these things that we see here on this slide too is affecting someone's ability to just get through their day, like to wake up on time, to show up on time for a Zoom meeting, to eat regular meals, to get a good amount of sleep every night, or if it's starting to affect someone's ability to concentrate and pay attention, right? So not just log into Zoom, but actually be present and engaged and absorb the information, or if it's starting to affect connections with other people, right? If it's really starting to affect like friendships or relationships with the people close to us, who we care about and who care about us in turn, then it's just a good opportunity to do that check-in, right? To see if everything is all right and if there is anything that we could possibly do to help support them, or maybe think about ourselves reaching out for that little extra help and support. It's definitely okay to do that. I know we've lived in a world, in a society that looks at help-seeking behaviors as being some sign of weakness, but I think the opposite of that is true. Like if you are able to recognize that this isn't necessarily something that I can help or manage on my own, and I may need a little extra help and support in that, I think that's a huge sign of strength because that's not the easiest thing in the world to do. I think the only way that we have made it to this day is because we have done so together. And the only way we're going to continue moving forward is if we continue to do it together as well. So it's definitely okay to reach out to your support system, to lean on that a little bit if you need that extra help and support. And if even that isn't quite enough, reaching out and connecting to a mental health professional, right? To really provide that structured support to help with any kind of challenges you may have in your life, any kind of impacts that you might be seeing in a more professional sense. Right, so an easy way to help us kind of gauge where we are and kind of do that check-in with ourselves is we can break it up into something called the Likert scale of how we respond to stress and anxiety. So we have this scale here ranging from 0 to 100 broken up into 3 different ranges. Right? So it's a nice visual to give us an idea of where we are in a certain place, but also to be able to identify the tools that are going to help us as well. So there is a difference between practicing self-care and then actually identifying coping skills. And there's even something beyond that called distress tolerance skills, right? So self-care is kind of what we do on the day-to-day, right? The things that we like. If we have like a calming scent that we like to have with our diffuser, if we like watching a funny talking animal video, if we like just having a real quick conversation with someone that we love, right? All those activities would be in our day-to-day. Coping skills would be what we do to help calm down our nervous system. So this is where our nervous system starts to become activated. So we want to start doing things to just calm our body down. And distress tolerance skills would be those things that we immediately need to calm our bodies down. Like this is where we start to really feel overwhelmed. And our body is definitely activated, or our nervous system is definitely activated. So we need to do things to get our body down to a certain level so we can move on to other coping skills or self-care skills to continue that process of really finding that balance again. So we can take a look at this represented in 3 different ranges. So 0 to 40 is the range where we're feeling pretty good, right? We're feeling pretty okay. It's only when you start moving closer to that 40 mark when you may start to notice that, yeah, I'm feeling a little bit of anxiety, right? You have that kind of limited awareness of it. So this range is where self-care is especially effective. And we may be in this range a little bit, right, throughout our day, and we want to make sure that we are practicing self-care even when we feel like we don't need self-care. We can liken it to like investing into our emotional bank accounts, right? We're always saying like we should invest in our finances. We put a little bit away into our savings on a regular basis in case we need to fall back on it. We can have that same approach for practicing self-care too, right? Like we're practicing self-care on a regular basis, depositing into our emotional bank account. And that way, if there comes a time down the road where we'll have to pull from that emotional bank account to support ourselves or to support another person, then we'll have something to actually pull from. So we definitely want to make sure that we're making that time to practice self-care on a regular basis, even if that's only 5 minutes out of your day, a couple times a day. Just doing that consistently is you investing in your mental health and is really going to help you out when you are in the 0 to 40 range. 40 to 60 is the range where we are definitely aware that we're stressed out and we're feeling anxious. This is where we can really start to feel it in our body, right? Those physiological symptoms. So this is where we may find that all of those really awesome things we did for self-care aren't as effective, right? They aren't having that same kind of effect. And so we want to shift more towards identifying really specific coping skills to help us. 60 to 100 is the range where our nervous system, like I said, is definitely activated. We're feeling really overwhelmed. It's really hard to like concentrate or pay attention or anything in that. So we definitely want to find something to calm down our nervous system as quickly as we can. And this is where we can rely on different kind of distress tolerance skills. So self-care practices may not work in the 60 to 100 range. Even some of the coping skills that we identify may not be as effective. So we want to go for those really specific distress tolerance skills to just calm down our bodies. And that way it'll hopefully move us back into that 40 to 60 range where we can continue that calming down process. Now, I know it's nice for me to kind of lay out these ranges in really specific like categories. And since everyone has been experiencing increasing levels of stress and anxiety where we would normally find ourselves in the 0 to 40 range through most of our day. And then when we get stressed out about something, it'll push us into the 40 to 60. A lot of people's baselines are actually in the 40 to 60 range, right? And so when we have some added stress or added feelings of anxiety on top of that, it pushes us into the 60 to 100 range. So that's why it's really important that we are identifying those skills that we can use depending on which range we are in. And we just want to check in with ourselves, right? Know what our tells are. How does our body respond to stress and anxiety mentally? How are we able to cope with that? And that's really going to go a long way in helping to really just manage these increasing levels that we've been seeing. So there's a bunch of different kinds of skills that are out there. So there's a bunch of ways to practice self-care too, but with the time frame that we have, I'll let you brainstorm that on your own. You probably all have a pretty good idea of what you like and what makes you happy. It helps to identify things in different categories, right? People, activities, places that you can practice self-care in, engaging your senses in different ways. And so when we move into that 40 to 60 range, we can start taking a look at different kind of coping skills, right? To really help us give a more structured way to manage those increasing levels of stress and anxiety. So I'll just touch on a couple of them, but there's like a whole list on the slide and even more beyond this. You can find a lot of these for free, like on YouTube, or free apps that you can download that can help teach you a lot of these skills and give you an opportunity to practice them as well. I do want to make a quick note on aromatherapy, if that's something that you're interested in or that you already are into, that you just do a little bit of homework and a little bit of research behind it. If you talk to someone who is really knowledgeable about aromatherapy, because it's more than just smelling things that relax you. And when we're looking at different kind of essential oils, I know there are some oils that can only be diffused. Some shouldn't be diffused. Some are unsafe to put directly onto your skin. Some are unsafe around pets and children. So if that is a route that you want to take when identifying a coping skill, just doing a little bit of homework, a little bit of research behind it to make sure that you're able to do so in a safe way. Mindfulness is also a really great coping skill. And there's a lot of different kind of pieces that make up the practicing of mindfulness. There's a lot of different ways to be able to do that. And it really does take practice to be present focused, to be single task minded instead of like balancing a whole bunch of things on our plate. Right? That's what we wear, that almost as like a badge of honor, right? And to say like, look at all the things I'm working on at the same time. Look at all the things I'm juggling and getting done. But we want to do our best to actually just focus on one thing at a time, because even if we feel like we're really good at multitasking, it means our attention is split, right? So we may not be able to give as much as we are able to, or as much as we want to, if our attention is split like that. So it definitely takes practice to focus on just one thing at a time. Meditation can help, but this is also something that we have to work towards. If you've never really tried meditation before, don't feel like you have to jump into a full 30-minute meditation session. There are really short, easy couple-minute ones, because it's actually, again, really hard to only focus on one thing at a time and nothing else. So just take those baby steps, right? If meditation is something that you want to explore. Prayer, right? More traditional prayers and practices, if you want to take care of your spirit in a sense, with an organized religion, is also a really great way to practice mindfulness as well. Being a good listener, being accessible and engaged with our support systems, we could do so in a mindful way as well. But the one I really wanted to highlight for our time together today is radical acceptance, right? So radical acceptance is essentially is accepting the things that we cannot change, right? So if I can change something, I will change it, right? I'll take those steps, I'll make those efforts to do something different. But if I can't change it, then I need to accept that it's unchangeable and then do my best to move on from that, right? So holding on to those feelings of like unfairness, or things, or really hyper focusing on things that we don't necessarily have a whole lot of control over, really doesn't help in accepting like the reality of a situation. And that's what keeps us in that stuck feeling, right? Or in that stuck place. Like we're just ruminating over something that we don't necessarily have any control over. So this, even though like I just kind of summarized it for all of you, right? It's actually something that takes practice. Sometimes it's a daily practice. Sometimes it does take the help of a mental health professional, right, to help guide you on that journey. But I think it's important to note that acceptance doesn't necessarily have to mean agreement, right? Accepting that something painful has happened and moving forward is not the same thing as saying it's okay that that painful thing happened, right? But rather that I'm taking my energy from denying that it happened or kind of ruminating over it, and instead I'm putting it towards healing from it and doing my best to move forward from it. But again, that does really take practice. So we want to focus on the things that we do have control over. Unfortunately, there are a lot of things in this world, a lot of people in this world that we just have no control over. So it's actually really beneficial for our mental health to do our best to let go of those things, right, that are out of our control. Just checking the chat really quickly. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments on what we're talking about on the slides or for the discussion, please absolutely drop it in the chat. I usually keep it open during our time together. So we have someone who does use aromatherapy. Awesome. So it looks like there's someone in the room that you can chat with to explore aromatherapy a little bit. I think it's great that it helps during childbirth. Yeah, I love peppermint, and lavender is one of my favorite scents too. Yeah. And I agree, Sally, radical acceptance. Like, it's funny because we hear people say it, right? Like, oh, let go of the things that you don't have control over, but there's an actual term for it, right? And it's an actual practice. So it's really just making that effort to focus on the things that we can control, as opposed to really focusing on things that we don't have control over, right? It's going to be more beneficial for our mental health in the long run. Right, so progressive muscle relaxation is an example of a coping skill that can also help manage increasing levels of stress and anxiety. I wanted to have the time to actually show you and practice this, but I might save it to the end because I know I want to leave time for questions to happen. I know I'm coming up on my 30-minute mark here. So I'll bookmark this. If we have time at the end, we can definitely go through a really quick, easy session to actually practice what progressive muscle relaxation is. This is personally one of my favorite ones because I know one of my physiological tells when I'm stressed out is I carry a lot of that muscle tension. So this is a way to use our bodies to trick our mind. So essentially what happens is we're hyper tightening different muscle groups so that when we release it, it's like a hyper release, right? We can actually feel that tension fall away. And that in turn sends a message to our brain that this is my body calming down, right? This is that tension falling away. It sometimes helps me when I have trouble falling asleep at night, just kind of going through a real quick progressive muscle relaxation exercise to release some of that pent up muscle tension and make me feel a bit more relaxed, and it helps me transition into sleep. So this is an example, an effective one for me personally, but again, different coping skills work better for some. They may not work as well for others. And there's so many that are out there that you can also explore for yourselves. Here are some examples of the different distress tolerance skills that are out there too. So really when we start to feel overwhelmed, when we're in that 60 to 100 range, these are the things that we can do to really calm down our nervous system. One of our favorite ones is the dive response. So the dive response is essentially what happens when we go underwater. Our body doesn't take in oxygen. And it's more than just holding our breath. So I know when we go swimming, obviously we hold our breath when we go underwater, but even when we're unexpectedly submerged, the dive response is activated because our bodies recognize that they're not in a place at the moment to be able to take in oxygen. So what happens is we want to keep as much oxygen inside of our bodies as possible. And as a result of that, our blood pressure slows down, our heart rate slows down, blood circulation slows down as well. So it's actually on a physiological level, our body's calming down. So I know we can't just jump into a pool or jump into the ocean anytime we feel overwhelmed. So a really easy way to activate it is if you just get a cold, wet rag and lay it over this portion of your face. And do some deep breathing exercises. If you have a bowl of cold water, you could just stick your face in it and hold your breath for about 10 seconds. Both of those things will activate that dive response, and you can actually feel your body starting to calm down. And then from there, you can move on to other kind of coping skills to help you continue on that process. So just a couple examples of those distress tolerance skills, what we mean when we're feeling really overwhelmed and we just have to get that backdoor trap into our nervous system to calm down, so we can continue practicing other things to help promote our mental health. Support plans are also really important for everyone, not just people who may be in a crisis. We should also have some idea of what our support plan looks like. So know who the people are that you can talk to when you need to have like deep, meaningful conversations, someone to vent to, right? Someone to lean on for that extra help and support, but also identify the people that you just enjoy interacting with. Like if you have a friend who's really funny, or someone that you like sending TikTok videos back and forth to, or funny memes, identify who those people are too, because we have a lot of different kinds of connections in our lives, and they should all be part of our support plan. If we have any providers, make sure we have their contacts programmed into our phones, into our devices. We should do the same with those crisis resources that are out there, even if we personally may not be using them. At least we will have them on hand. So if we ever do find ourselves in a place where we will have to contact one of them or share it with someone else, it's easily right there already, right? Just programmed into your contact. We can connect with our deeper self on multiple levels, right? Kind of ask ourselves those bigger questions like, who am I? What kind of person do I want to be? How am I treating the people that I have in my life, right? What kind of impact do I want to have? What kind of footprint do I want to leave behind? So really connecting with who we are and with our identity can be a source of support for us, like something that we can actually lean back on. And then, of course, find the things that help you de-stress, help make you feel better when you are feeling sad or down, and identify the things that help you calm down too when you're feeling frustrated or overwhelmed at times. There are a bunch of different resources that are out there. I'm sure you're very familiar with most of them, but it is important to know that these are available 24/7 if anyone is in a mental health related crisis or experiencing thoughts of suicide. We have the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. We have the Hawaiʻi Cares Line as well. We know that there has been a lot more time being spent at home, and not every home is a safe place. So we also want to make sure that we know that there are resources for those times as well. So resources to help support our little ones, our children, and our youth. For the child abuse reporting hotline, child trafficking reporting hotline, anyone who may be experiencing intimate partner violence or domestic violence, there are definitely resources for that as well. So we want to make sure we are sharing them with people who may need them. And like I said earlier too, there's a bunch of different kind of really great apps that are out there that help you take a look at what your self-care routine is. That'll help you learn different kind of coping skills. That'll help track your mood, right? And gauge where you are on a day-to-day basis. It'll help track your sleep too and give you tips on how to get a good amount of sleep every night. So both of these apps are two apps that our staff at Mental Health America of Hawaii have both tried out before, have both used, and so sometimes currently used to this day. So it's not something that we're just like, yeah, you should try this out. We've actually tried them out ourselves, right? So we can speak to how effective that they can be. So, but again, there's tons of apps that are out there. Most of them are free to download, but make sure that you are finding the ones that really help support you. You can connect with us as well. We offer free community trainings talking about mental wellness, even more deep dives into self-care and practicing different kinds of coping skills. We offer suicide prevention trainings. We offer mental health first aid as well. We have previous recordings of some of our trainings on our YouTube channel, so I'll be sure to drop that link in the chat as well. But if you just have any kind of questions about what kind of resources that are out there, or if you want to learn a little bit more just about mental health in general, feel free to contact us. Usually someone is available in the office Monday through Friday through those quote unquote normal business hours, right? Between like 8:30 and around 4:30. Usually someone is available to talk. Here's our contact information. I'll also drop my personal email in the chat as well. We're always happy to answer any questions you may have or point you in the direction for any kind of services or programs that are being offered in the state of Hawaii. We have a Finding Help phone list that we just updated last year. So if you're looking for a starting point, know what those kinds of resources are, that's also a really great place to start, and you can find that on our website too. So I know I'm coming up. I do want to make time for questions, so now would be a really awesome time to chat. Thank you for joining. Or if you need to step away to another meeting, we're always like on the go, right?